The room was tense, its atmosphere thick with anticipation. For years, the peace talks between the galaxy's most powerful species had been building to this moment. Leaders from various factions sat around a large, circular table, their eyes locked on the human diplomat, Alex. The council was eager for the agreement to be finalized, a moment that would bring a fragile peace to a war-torn galaxy. Alex had long been seen as the key to this historic accord, the one who could bring humanity into the fold of intergalactic diplomacy. Everyone in the room knew that his decision would shape the future of the galaxy. Alex, however, wasn't what the council expected. He wasn't sitting at the table, nor was he in the spotlight. He was standing by the window, looking out into the vastness of space, his hands clasped behind his back. His presence seemed calm, almost too calm, considering the gravity of the moment. The others in the room shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between him and the council members. The air crackled with unspoken questions. Why wasn't Alex participating in the conversation? Why wasn't he speaking? As the discussions continued, the representatives of other species argued passionately, their voices rising and falling in heated exchanges. But Alex remained silent, staring out into the stars, lost in his thoughts. It wasn't that he didn't care, no. He cared deeply. He understood the stakes better than anyone in the room. But that was exactly why he wasn't going to say a word. Not yet. The minutes ticked by, and the tension only grew. Finally, one of the council members, a tall alien with deep blue skin and glowing eyes, stood up. He had been watching Alex closely and could no longer contain his impatience. Alex, you must speak. The galaxy needs your approval for this peace agreement to go forward. This is your moment to decide the fate of billions. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Alex. His expression remained unreadable. He took a slow breath, as if contemplating the weight of the decision. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the exit. Gasps echoed around the room. The council members exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what was happening. What is this? Another council representative, a sharp-eyed humanoid, barked. You cannot just walk away from this. But Alex didn't stop. He moved with purpose, his footsteps echoing in the now deafening silence of the chamber. He didn't glance back. He didn't say a single word. His silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. As Alex reached the door, one of the council members, an elderly, silver-haired alien, stood up shakily. Are you rejecting the peace talks? He asked, his voice wavering. Still, Alex said nothing. He reached for the door, the cool metal sliding open with a soft hiss. The sound felt final, like the closing of a chapter no one was ready to face. Alex stepped through the door and into the hallway beyond, leaving the council room in stunned silence. The members of the council were paralyzed. The sudden departure, the complete absence of words, it was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The galaxy had been waiting for this moment, and now it was slipping away, slipping through their fingers like sand. It was not just the human diplomat who had left. It was the hope they had pinned on humanity's willingness to cooperate, to follow the lead of the powerful Galactic Council. Alex's rejection wasn't just a personal decision. It was a statement, a defiance that no one had expected, and one they didn't know how to process. In the hall, Alex didn't look back. He could feel the eyes of the council members burning into his back, their unspoken questions pressing against him. But he had made his choice. The talks weren't going to happen, not like this. Not when the council still believed they held all the cards, not when they still thought they could manipulate humanity into submission. Humanity wasn't a pawn, and Alex wasn't about to play the game on their terms. He reached the elevator that would take him to the lower levels of the station, where his ship was waiting. As the elevator doors closed, he felt a brief moment of relief, though it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of what he had just done. It was a gamble, a dangerous one, but it was necessary. Humanity could not be dictated to. Not anymore. In the council room, confusion gave way to panic. What do we do? Someone asked. breaking the silence. The blue-skinned alien who had spoken earlier, his voice calm but shaking, turned toward the others. This wasn't part of the plan. We expected him to sign, to agree. Now, what do we do? Without his signature, everything collapses. What's happening? Why would he leave without a word? Another member demanded, pacing nervously. We need him. We can't afford a collapse now. I told you humans were unpredictable, muttered the humanoid representative who had shouted earlier. They're dangerous. This is the worst possible outcome. We can't afford to lose them now, not when we're so close. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. It wasn't just the humans' refusal to sign. It was the implications of it. They hadn't just walked away from a treaty. They had sent a message, loud and clear. They were no longer passive players in the galactic game. They had teeth. They could fight back. The Council had underestimated them, and now they were going to have to face the consequences. The tension in the room was palpable. The older, silver-haired alien, who had tried to speak to Alex before his departure, stared at the empty chair where the human diplomat had sat moments before. We're running out of time, he said quietly. If we don't handle this carefully, the entire peace agreement could collapse. We need to find him. And what will we do when we find him? The blue-skinned alien asked. What if he refuses to negotiate? What if he tells everyone what happened here today? The question hung in the air, unanswered. The Council had no plan for this. No backup. No contingency. They had believed that Alex would comply, that the humans would fall in line like every other species had. But now they were facing a different reality. A reality where the humans weren't going to be controlled. Meanwhile, Alex was already thinking 3 steps ahead. The galaxy thought it could break humanity into submission with peace talks. But peace under the Council's rule was nothing more than a gilded cage. Humanity deserved better. They deserved more. And Alex knew exactly how to make them see it. As the elevator doors opened, he stepped out, his mind racing with plans. His team was already prepared for what came next. They had been waiting for this moment, for the chance to make their move. The Council thought they had the upper hand, but humanity was about to show them just how wrong they were. Alex's silence had been more than a rejection. It was a declaration that humanity would no longer be controlled, and the galaxy was about to find out what that really meant. The news of Alex's silent rejection spread like wildfire across the galaxy. From the towering cities of the Andorian colonies to the icy plains of the Villari homeworld, every species who had been watching the peace talks closely felt the shockwaves of humanity's sudden defiance. For years, humanity had been seen as a potential ally, one that could bring stability to the galaxy. But now, in a single moment, that perception was shattered. The Council, unable to process what had just happened, began to fracture. Back at the Council chamber, the representatives from various species were frantically trying to make sense of the events. The blue-skinned alien, Sealar, paced restlessly. His usually composed demeanor was broken. He had been one of the staunchest supporters of the peace talks, confident that the alliance between the Council and humanity would reshape the future. Now that hope seemed like a distant memory. We've lost him, Sealar muttered, running a hand over his face. This is a disaster. Humanity has just declared that they will not be bound by our agreements. The Council chamber, once filled with the sound of smooth negotiations, was now quiet, save for the occasional murmur of worried voices. The once confident faces of the leaders were now filled with anxiety. There was a sharp tension in the air, something unsettling about the way the species who had once dominated the galaxy were now questioning their ability to maintain control. They had thought they could negotiate with humanity, but they had underestimated the resolve of its people. We cannot let this stand. The elderly alien, a once respected leader named Vossar, finally spoke, his voice slow and deliberate. Humanity has made its choice, and if we do not act quickly, we risk losing the entire negotiation. We cannot allow them to walk away without a response. This rebellion, This defiance, it could inspire others to do the same. A murmur of agreement spread around the table. The council had feared this moment. They had feared that humanity, a young but increasingly powerful force, might one day turn on them. And now, it seemed, that day had arrived. "We must send a message," Sealer said, his voice hardening. "We cannot let them think they can walk away without consequences. If we do not act now, we will lose all control over the galaxy. We must remind humanity of their place." Vossar's expression darkened. He looked at the others, his ancient eyes narrowing. "But how? If we force them into submission, we risk more than just a rebellion. We risk igniting a war. We cannot underestimate what we're dealing with. Humanity isn't like the others." It was a warning the Council had ignored for too long. Humanity, despite its relatively young history in the galaxy, had proven time and again that it was a force to be reckoned with. And now, it seemed the Council had pushed them too far. The door to the Council chamber opened abruptly, and a tall figure stepped into the room. It was one of the Council's military commanders, Commander Valak, known for his cold and calculated demeanor. He had been observing the situation from a distance, but now it was clear he had come to offer a solution. "I've been in contact with our spies," Valak said, his voice steady. "The humans are preparing for something. They aren't just walking away from the peace talks. They are making their next move." The room grew tense again. "What do you mean?" Sealer demanded. "What could they possibly be planning?" Valak's gaze remained fixed on the table as he spoke. "Humanity has a network of alliances, hidden from our eyes. They have already made contact with several fringe factions that were once neutral, now sympathetic to their cause. The talk of rebellion has already begun. I believe they plan to rally those forces. The silence today was a signal, not a surrender. They're preparing for something bigger." The realization hit hard. The Council had seen Alex's rejection as an isolated act, a single diplomat's decision. But now they understood. It was part of a larger strategy. Humanity wasn't just rejecting their terms. They were making a move to reshape the balance of power. "Damn it," Sealer cursed, slamming his fist on the table. "We should have anticipated this. They'd been planning this for months, perhaps even years. Humanity has been playing the long game." Vossar's voice was quiet but grave. "So what do we do now? Do we respond with force? Do we risk igniting a war that could consume us all?" The tension in the room reached its peak. The Council was divided. Some wanted to strike fast, hoping to crush humanity's resistance before it could grow. Others, more cautious, worried about the consequences of such a move. Vossar, the elder statesman, knew the price of underestimating a species, especially one as unpredictable and fiercely independent as humanity. "We need to talk to Alex," Vossar said finally. "He is the key to this. He has the power to lead humanity in a direction we can't control, and we cannot afford to let that power slip away. We need to understand what he's planning." Sealer shook his head. "He won't talk to us. Not after today. The trust is gone." Vossar stood up slowly, his posture worn with age and experience. "Then we find another way. We send a message to humanity, not through force, but through understanding. Alex isn't the only one who can negotiate. We must find a way to show them that we are willing to listen, but we cannot wait any longer. Every minute we waste, the situation grows more dangerous." As the Council members began to debate their options, Alex was already on the move. In a secure location on the outskirts of the station, he sat with his closest allies. His decision to leave the peace talks was calculated, not impulsive. He had known it would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy, but that was the point. Humanity's path had been too long controlled by those who thought they knew best, and it was time to shift that balance. Alex had been working on something for months, something the Council would never expect. Behind the scenes, human operatives had been contacting various resistance factions scattered across the galaxy. The Council had grown complacent in their belief that they could control every aspect of the galaxy's politics, But humanity's unity was about to surprise them. His eyes scanned the room, meeting the gaze of his team. "It's time," Alex said, his voice calm yet resolute. "We've sent our message. Now, we wait for the Council to make their move. We need to be ready." One of his allies, a woman named Juno, leaned forward. "What do you think they'll do? Will they try to force us back into the talks?" Alex paused for a moment, his mind racing. He knew the Council wasn't going to let this go easily. They would strike back, either with military force or with another attempt at negotiation, trying to lure humanity back into their web of control. But Alex wasn't worried about that. He had prepared for this moment. "They'll try to control the narrative," Alex replied. "They'll try to make it seem like we're the ones who are being unreasonable. But we're not the ones who walked away. We're not the ones who betrayed trust. We're not the ones who tried to enslave the galaxy with false promises of peace." The others in the room nodded. They understood. Humanity had been under the thumb of the Council for far too long. The galaxy needed a change, and Alex was ready to lead the charge. In the silence that followed, the weight of the situation began to settle in. The Council would come after them. They had no other choice. But humanity was no longer just a piece in the Council's game. They were about to change the rules of that game forever. As Alex stood, a sense of calm resolve washed over him. "Prepare for what's coming," he said. "The Council will come to us. But we'll be ready." The battle for the future of humanity was about to begin. And no one, not even the Council, could predict where it would lead. The days following Alex's silent rejection of the peace talks were filled with tension. The Council had not responded as they had hoped. Instead, their attempts to regain control only served to deepen the rift between humanity and the galaxy's most powerful factions. Alex's rejection had ignited something within the human race, something that could no longer be contained. It wasn't just about a peace agreement anymore. It was about the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. And Alex, having sparked this movement, knew there was no going back. On his ship, the Astra, Alex stood at the bridge, staring out into the vast expanse of space. The stars glimmered like distant promises, but his mind wasn't on the beauty of the universe. His thoughts were consumed with the next steps. He had already made contact with several factions, small, hidden groups who had long been dissatisfied with the Council's dominance. The humans weren't alone in their anger. There were others who felt oppressed, manipulated, and trapped by the Council's promises of peace. The war was not just political anymore. It was ideological. The Council had promised stability, but at what cost? They controlled the flow of resources, dictated the terms of trade, and forced weaker species into submission. Humanity had always been on the edge of that control, never fully integrated into the Council's plans. And now, Alex had shown them that humanity would not be subjugated any longer. As the Astra glided through space, Alex called his inner circle together. It was time to discuss the next phase. The resistance was small for now, but it was growing. Alex's actions had ignited something powerful in the hearts of many. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer willing to play by the Council's rules. It was time to take action. His trusted advisor, Juno, stepped forward first. She was a former strategist for the military, and her sharp mind had been one of Alex's greatest assets. "We've begun to receive signals from multiple factions," she said, showing him the holographic map that flickered to life in the air. "They're beginning to rally. Some are already on their way here. Others are preparing to send reinforcements. But we need to be cautious. If we move too quickly, we could provoke the Council into full-scale war." Alex nodded, his gaze intense. "We have no choice. The Council will never listen to us unless we make them understand we mean business. They'll see it as a threat. This is exactly what we want. We need to show them that humanity isn't just a pawn in their game." Another member of the team, a former diplomat named Marcus, spoke up. "You're right, Alex, but the Council is powerful. They've already sent out a message to all their allies. They'll try to isolate us, cut us off from the rest of the galaxy. They won't hesitate to use military force if they think it'll keep their power intact. Then we'll need to make sure they know we can fight back, Alex replied. His eyes flickered to the holomap again, which now displayed several key positions across the galaxy. There were places where the Council's power was weakest, places where resistance could be built up without immediate retaliation. We strike fast. We hit their weak points, places where they're vulnerable. We need to disrupt their control and show the galaxy that we're serious. Juno leaned over the map, her finger tracing a few strategic locations. These planets are where we should start. They're resource-rich, but not crucial to the Council's central power. If we can take them, we'll force the Council to react, but we'll also strengthen our position. If we can get a foothold here, we can build alliances with local systems that have been under Council control for too long. Alex's mind raced with the possibilities. Good. Let's move forward with these targets, but we need to be careful. We can't afford to make any missteps. The plan was set in motion. Over the following days, humanity's covert forces infiltrated the Council's weaker territories, taking control of key supply routes and communications outposts. The resistance was building. Though the Council had tried to issue harsh warnings to the humans, their attempts to suppress the growing rebellion were futile. Humanity was no longer passive. They were no longer just talking about peace. They were making a statement with every action. But as the resistance gained momentum, the Council was not blind to the growing threat. Their response came swiftly. The military arm of the Council, led by the cold and calculating Commander Valak, began to assemble forces to crush the rebellion. Valak was a tactical genius, and his reputation for decisiveness in battle had made him the Council's weapon of choice when dealing with insurrection. Valak had been watching humanity for years. He knew they were unpredictable. And now, as he prepared for war, he was determined to stamp out the rebellion before it could spread. The Council had expected Alex's rejection to be a momentary blip, a simple misstep in negotiations. They had underestimated humanity's resolve. They had underestimated Alex. As Valak prepared for his assault, Alex received word of the Council's preparations. His mind immediately shifted into strategic mode. The Council would strike hard. They would aim to crush the resistance quickly. But Alex had anticipated this. He knew they would come. That was why he had been building his forces, gathering allies, and preparing for a war that would not only be fought on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of the galaxy. We're not just fighting for survival anymore, Alex told his team. We're fighting for the soul of the galaxy. The Council may have the military power, but we have something they don't. A united cause, a cause worth fighting for. Juno looked at him with determination. So what's next? Alex's eyes sparkled with intensity. We make them understand that we're not just a threat. We're the future. The galaxy needs humanity now, more than ever. And if the Council refuses to see that, we'll make them see it, through force, through alliances, through every means necessary. As the resistance grew stronger, the galaxy was preparing for something big. The Council's war machine, led by Valak, was moving in to snuff out humanity's defiance. But humanity, under Alex's leadership, was rising like never before. The future of the galaxy was in the balance, and every move they made would change everything. The battle lines were drawn, and soon there would be no turning back. For Alex, there was no doubt. This wasn't just about winning a war. It was about securing humanity's place in the galaxy, not as pawns or subjects, but as leaders in their own right. And no matter the cost, he was willing to fight for that future. The Council had underestimated humanity's spirit. It was time to prove them wrong. The galaxy was about to feel the weight of a storm that had been brewing for years. As Alex and his team strengthened their foothold across Council-controlled territories, the tension between the human resistance and the Council reached a breaking point. The galaxy, once united under the Council's rule, was beginning to fracture. The Council had built their empire on manipulation, coercion, and control, but humanity, led by Alex, was determined to shatter their false sense of security. Alex stood on the bridge of the Astra, watching the starfields whizzing past as the ship made its way toward a strategic location. The peace talks were long behind them now. What started as a diplomatic mission had transformed into a battle for humanity's freedom, and Alex had no illusions about the stakes. This was no longer just about rejecting an agreement. It was about survival. The Council's response was inevitable. They were coming for him, coming for humanity's freedom. They wouldn't let their grip on the galaxy slip away so easily. But Alex had made his choice. He had stepped out of the Council's web, and he wasn't going to allow humanity to be brought back into it. "We've received word from several factions," Juno reported as she entered the bridge, her face grim but determined. "The Council is assembling their forces. Commander Valak has already set course for one of our key strongholds." Alex's jaw tightened. Valak was the last person he wanted to face. The commander was known for his ruthlessness, and his tactics were as efficient as they were brutal. But Alex knew they had one advantage: time. The Council had underestimated humanity's ability to mobilize. They had assumed that the rebellion would fall apart before it could truly begin. They were wrong. "How soon before they reach us?" Alex asked, his voice calm but carrying the weight of urgency. "Within the next 2 days," Juno replied. "If we don't act fast, the Council will overrun our position and cut us off from our allies. We need to decide whether we confront them head-on or regroup and fortify." Alex stared out at the swirling stars. His mind raced through the possibilities. It was clear that the Council wanted to end the rebellion swiftly, either by eliminating him or by crushing humanity's newfound unity. If they were forced into a retreat, it would only give the Council time to tighten its grip once again. But if they fought back now, if they were bold enough to face the Council's military might head-on, they could tip the scales in their favor. The galaxy needed a show of strength, and humanity was about to provide it. "We fight," Alex said, his voice resolute. "We can't run anymore. The Council thinks we're weak, too divided, too fractured to stand against them. We'll prove them wrong. We'll hit them where it hurts the most, force them to think twice before they come for us again." Juno nodded, already moving to relay orders to the crew. "I'll prepare the fleet. We have support from several of the outer colonies, but we'll need reinforcements from Earth if we want to make this a decisive blow." Alex turned toward her. "Earth's response time might be too slow. We can't wait. We need to rely on the forces we have here, those who believe in this cause, those who aren't afraid to fight for the future of the galaxy." Juno looked at him for a moment, reading the intensity in his eyes. Then she turned and left, determined to carry out his orders. Alex stayed on the bridge, alone with his thoughts. The resistance was growing stronger, but they were still outnumbered by the Council's might. Every planet they took, every stronghold they gained, was another victory. But each victory also brought the Council closer. They were already mobilizing their fleet, preparing for a strike that would wipe out the human resistance and crush any hope of a new order. The Council had their sights set on Alex, and they would stop at nothing to see him and his movement destroyed. But Alex wasn't afraid. He knew the risks. He had lived through enough battles to understand that victory didn't come without sacrifice. He wasn't just fighting for humanity's survival. He was fighting for something far greater: the right to decide their own future, to chart their own course among the stars. The war was about to begin in earnest. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Commander Valak stood aboard his flagship, the Obsidian, watching as his fleet assembled. His mind was sharp, calculating. He had spent years studying the humans, their unpredictable nature, their tenacity. He knew they were dangerous, but he didn't believe they could win. They had no true experience with war on a galactic scale. They had no idea what they were up against. The Council had placed its faith in him for a reason. He had crushed rebellions before, and this one would be no different. But there was something unsettling about Alex, something that told Valak that this fight might not be as easy as it seemed. He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare the fleet. We strike within the hour. No more delays. We finish this now." The officer nodded, typing rapidly into the control panel. "Commander, all ships are on standby. We can engage at your command." Valak looked out the viewport once again, watching the formation of his ships as they drifted into position. "This ends today. We show them that they are nothing compared to the might of the Council." As the fleet moved into position, Valak's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe for a second that humanity could stand up to the full force of the Council's military. But Alex's actions had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that this battle would be more complicated than he had anticipated. Back on the Astra, Alex prepared for the worst. The resistance forces were ready, each unit positioned strategically to give them the best chance of survival. The key to their success would be speed and precision. Hit fast, hit hard, and force the Council to deal with the rebellion on multiple fronts. As the first wave of Council ships entered the system, Alex gave the order to engage. The Astra rocketed forward, its guns blazing. Explosions lit up the dark expanse of space as the two forces collided in a fiery clash. The resistance was outgunned, but they had something the Council didn't: determination. Every human ship fought with the ferocity of a species that had survived against impossible odds. They were fighting for their right to exist, and that was something the Council could never understand. Alex stood at the helm of his ship, watching the battle unfold on the main screen. This was it. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. He had no doubt they could win this battle, but the war would be far from over. The Council would regroup, re-strategize, and come after them with even more force. But they would never be the same. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And as the battle raged on, Alex knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. The Council's empire was built on fear, on domination, on control. But humanity had something they didn't: freedom. And that was a power they could never take away. The war for the future of the galaxy had begun. And no matter what happened next, humanity would never bow down to the Council again. The battle in space raged on, each explosion a testament to the ferocity of the struggle. The Astra fought alongside the human fleet, weaving through the chaos of laser fire and ion blasts. Alex stood resolutely at the command center of his flagship, his mind sharp, his heart steady. This was no ordinary battle. It wasn't about defeating the Council in a single strike. It was about sending a message. Humanity was no longer a passive observer in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Commander, enemy forces are overwhelming us on the left flank." Juno's voice cut through the tension in the air. Her eyes scanned the holographic map, tracking the movements of both the resistance ships and the Council's massive warships. Alex's gaze remained fixed on the screen, but his mind was already racing through the options. The battle wasn't going according to plan. The Council's ships were more numerous and better equipped than they had anticipated. Still, humanity wasn't about to back down. "Redirect our ships. Reinforce the left flank with the Falcon and Vanguard. We can't afford to lose that position," Alex commanded, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. His team acted quickly, shifting their resources to protect the most vulnerable area of their defense. "Yes, Commander," Juno responded, quickly relaying the orders. On the battlefield, the resistance ships moved with surprising efficiency. Their tactics weren't perfect, but they were unpredictable. The Council's fleet, accustomed to overwhelming enemies with brute force and superior firepower, found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow the expected playbook. Alex's mind flashed back to the early days of humanity's involvement with the Council. Back then, humanity had been naive, hoping for a chance to negotiate, to build a future among the stars. But the Council had never seen them as equals. They saw humanity as a resource to be controlled, a species to be used and discarded at will. The more Alex saw of their cruelty, the more he knew that peace with such an entity was impossible. Now that realization was fueling the resistance, and it was giving humanity the edge they needed. But as the battle raged, the Astra suddenly lurched, and a sharp alarm blared throughout the ship. Shield integrity at 30%. We've taken heavy damage on the starboard side. The tactical officer shouted, her voice strained with urgency. Alex's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. How long until we can bring the shields back online? 2 minutes, Commander, the officer replied. Hold them off for 2 minutes. We can't lose this ship. Alex barked. He looked at Juno, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. She knew exactly what he was thinking. 2 minutes, Juno repeated, moving swiftly to the next station to issue more orders. Alex turned back to the tactical display, watching the enemy ships closing in. His ship was damaged, but it wasn't out of the fight. The Council's flagship, the Obsidian, was still out there, commanding the charge, its massive guns trained on the human fleet. Valak's ship was their greatest threat, and Alex knew that if they didn't neutralize it soon, the balance of the battle would shift in favor of the Council. All units, target the Obsidian, Alex commanded. We need to disable their command ship, or this fight is lost. The Astra surged forward, its weapons firing in rapid succession. The ship's cannons lit up the space around them, launching a barrage of missiles toward the Obsidian. Explosions rippled across the enemy ship's hull, but it held strong, its defenses holding off the assault. Direct hit on their shield generators, but it's not enough, Juno reported, her voice steady despite the dire situation. We need more firepower to break through their defenses. Alex gritted his teeth. He had anticipated a long battle, but the Council's response was more coordinated than he had feared. They were going to need something more, something that could shift the tide. Juno, prep the experimental weapon, Alex said, his voice low but firm. Juno froze for a moment. Are you sure? It's risky, and we don't know how it'll affect the fleet's coordination. It could backfire. Alex's eyes never left the screen. We don't have a choice. If we can't break their defenses now, we'll lose this battle, and humanity's fight for freedom will be over before it truly begins. With a look of determination, Juno nodded. I'll get it ready. You just make sure we hold the line. As Juno worked with the crew to prepare the weapon, Alex's mind shifted back to the larger picture. This battle was just one moment in a much larger war. The Council might be able to suppress humanity for a time, but humanity wasn't a species to be subjugated. The Council had made that mistake when they underestimated the willpower of the humans. Now, Alex and his forces were showing the galaxy that they were capable of standing against the galaxy's greatest power. The Astra pushed forward, narrowly dodging enemy fire, as Alex steeled himself for what was coming next. They needed to outthink the Council, not just outfight them. The experimental weapon was humanity's ace in the hole, their trump card. But if it failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. Minutes later, the crew of the Astra received a signal from Juno. The weapon is ready. Prepare for a coordinated attack on the Obsidian. Alex took a deep breath. This was it. He gave the order. All units, focus your fire on the Obsidian's main reactor. This is our one shot. Take it. The Astra fired everything it had left. The experimental weapon, a long-range plasma pulse cannon, flared to life, unleashing a blinding beam of energy that streaked across the battlefield and collided directly with the Obsidian's core. For a moment, there was nothing but a blinding white light, followed by a massive explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through space. The Obsidian trembled under the impact, its shields failing and its engines sputtering as the damage began to overwhelm its systems. Alex's heart pounded as he watched the massive warship stagger in space, slowly losing power. The tide was turning. The Council's flagship was crippled, and the rest of their fleet faltered as their command structure began to collapse. The Resistance, emboldened by this victory, pushed forward with renewed vigor. It wasn't over, but they had gained a critical advantage. "We did it," Juno said quietly, her voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and relief. Alex nodded, his face solemn. "This is just the beginning. We've hurt them, but they'll regroup. We can't afford to rest. We need to secure our positions and prepare for whatever comes next." As the battle began to wind down, the Astra and its allies began to mop up the remaining Council forces. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, had made a statement to the Council and to the galaxy. Humanity had the will to fight, the strength to win, and the determination to forge their own future. In the aftermath, Alex stood on the bridge of the Astra, gazing at the wreckage of the Obsidian in the distance. The Council would not give up easily. They would strike back, but Alex knew something that the Council didn't. Humanity had already proven that they could not be silenced. The war was far from over, but Alex had no doubts. Humanity would fight for their future, and they would fight together. "Prepare for the next phase," Alex said, his voice resolute. "We've only just begun."